If you're listening late at night, you might want to stay until the end. Something happened to me during my night shift, and to this day, I can't find an explanation that makes sense. My name doesn't matter. What matters is that I worked as a night watchman in a 12-story commercial building in the suburbs of Detroit. The building was practically empty. Most of the companies had gone bankrupt or moved away after the crisis. Only a few accounting offices remained on the upper floors and 1 or 2 rented rooms. Nothing that justified my presence there, honestly. But the salary paid the bills, and I preferred the silence of the early morning to the chaos of the day. I was an ex-military man, 2 tours in Iraq. I came back with my head on straight, or at least that's what I told myself. I accepted that job because it didn't require much thinking. Just walking around, checking doors, watching cameras. Control, that's what I needed. The rounds always followed the same routine: 11 p.m., midnight, 2 a.m., 4 a.m., and 6 a.m. I would go up from the basement to the roof, check each floor, and come back down. The elevator was old, made an irritating metallic noise, but it worked. The building smelled of mold, old carpet, and that industrial air conditioner that never completely shuts off. During the winter, the wind whistled through the ventilation ducts as if the place were breathing. That night, it was a Tuesday in November, biting cold, damp air. I started my 11 p.m. round. Basement, ground floor, intermediate floors. Everything normal. Until I reached the 7th floor. That's where I saw the car. A gray, old-model sedan was parked a few meters from the elevator. It was perfectly aligned in the parking space, as if someone had been careful when parking. I frowned. That floor was only used for storage. No one was authorized to leave a vehicle there. I approached slowly, flashlight in hand. The car was immaculate, dust-free as if it had just arrived. I touched the hood, warm. The engine was still hot. My stomach clenched. I looked around. Absolute silence. The fluorescent lights flickered faintly. No movement. No sound of footsteps. No doors closing. I mentally noted. Verify entry record. Perhaps someone had come in before my shift and I hadn't been notified. It happened. I finished my patrol and went back to the guard post. I checked the cameras. Nothing. No cars entering. No movement on the 7th floor in the last 3 hours. I thought, system failure. The cameras in this building are a joke. But something inside me, something didn't calm down. 2 hours later, I went to do the 2nd round. The car was no longer on the 7th floor. I was on the 3rd one. I stopped in front of the 3rd floor elevator and stared at that gray sedan for what seemed like far too long. He was there. Same spot. Same position, as if he had never left. But I had seen that car on the 7th floor 2 hours ago. He had touched the hot hood. I had smelled the still fresh combustion odor in the air. I walked slowly toward him, each step echoing in the dead silence of the hallway. I placed my hand on the hood again. Warm. Engine recently started. Impossible. My heart started racing. But I forced myself to stay calm. I'd learned it in the army. Breathe, analyze, don't panic. I walked around the car. Michigan license plate, registered. Nothing strange. Trunk closed. Windows, clean. Nothing wrong. Just a car. I picked up the radio and called the monitoring center. This is the security guard for the Weston building. There's an unauthorized vehicle on the 3rd floor. Could you check the garage cameras for me? The operator's sleepy voice replied after a few seconds. Let me see. 3rd floor, right? That silence. Then, I can't see anything, man. Empty hallway. I looked at the car in front of me. There's a gray sedan here, right in front of the elevator. I'm telling you, man, the cameras aren't showing anything. It must be a problem with the angle or a reflection. Do you want me to send someone over there? No. Never mind. I turned off the radio. My hand was trembling slightly. I took a deep breath. Camera angle, reflection, technical glitch. It had to be this way. But deep down, I knew that wasn't the case. I finished my patrol and returned to the guard post. This time, I watched the recordings with obsessive attention. I went over and over the last 4 hours. All the entries, all the exits. Nothing. That car just appeared. I grabbed a notepad and started writing. 11:15 p.m. Car on the 7th floor, near the east elevator. Hood is hot. 1:20 a.m. Car on the 3rd floor, same relative position. Hood is hot. I stared at my notes until the next round, at 2 a.m. This time, I went straight down to the basement. And there he was. Parked in space B12, 3 meters from the elevator. Engine warm. Quiet. Waiting. My breath hitched. I felt cold sweat trickle down my back despite the biting chill of the basement. The fluorescent lights buzzed too loudly. The smell of damp concrete and motor oil filled the air. I grabbed my phone and took a picture of the car. Then I took another one of the license plate. My hand was shaking so much that the image came out blurry. That's when I realized the car wasn't following me. He was me waiting. Everywhere I went, he was already there. It didn't matter the order. It didn't matter the time. When I arrived, he was warm. Just arrived. As if he somehow knew where I would be next. I stepped back toward the elevator without taking my eyes off the vehicle. I pressed the button. The metal groaned. The doors opened. I got in. Before the doors closed completely, I looked one last time. The car windows were fogged up, foggy on the inside. It's as if someone has been breathing in there for a very, very long time. I canceled the 4 a.m. round. I stayed in the guardhouse, sitting in the old swivel chair, staring at the security screens. My eyes burned. Cold coffee on the table, hands still trembling. But I couldn't stop thinking about those foggy windows. I tried to rationalize it. Condensation. Temperature difference. The car was closed. The interior air. But it didn't make sense. The subsoil was freezing. If there was condensation, it would be on the outside. That blurring was different. It was as if someone had spent hours breathing in there, exhaling hot vapor against the cold glass. Like when you're stuck in a car in winter and the air becomes thick, humid, and suffocating. I picked up the notepad again and wrote 02:10 a.m. Basement, parking space, B12. Fogged windows on the inside. No signs of forced entry. No movement on the cameras. I stared at those words until they lost their meaning. At 4:30 a.m., I made a decision. I needed to open that car. I went back down to the basement, this time with a tactical flashlight, radio, and a crowbar that was kept in the maintenance closet. My heart was pounding. Each step sounded too loud. The elevator descended with that sickly metallic creak that had never bothered me before, but now it seemed like a warning. Don't go down. Don't go there. The doors opened. The car was there. Same vacancy, same position, but now I could see better. The windows were completely fogged up. All of them. Driver's side, passenger's side, rear windows. A thick layer of condensation covered the glass like a white, opaque curtain. I approached slowly, the flashlight steady in my left hand. My breath came in clouds of vapor. The basement smelled of mold, old gasoline, and something else. Something organic, like wet clothes left closed for weeks. I stopped 1 meter from the car. That's when I saw it. Brands, handprints, on the fogged glass, from the inside. These weren't old marks. They were recent. Fingers had dragged across the damp glass, leaving clear, desperate trails, several marks, overlapping. As if someone had tried to wipe away the condensation to see outside, or as if he were trying to get out. My throat went dry. I took a step forward. 2. The flashlight illuminated the driver's side window. The marks were clear. 5 fingers, an entire palm pressed against the glass. I reached out my hand. I almost touched it. And then I saw the condensation was increasing. As I watched, a new layer of vapor formed, slowly, thickly, as if someone had just exhaled against the glass. The fogging spread, covering the old marks, creating new ones. Someone was breathing in there. Now, I stepped back. I stumbled. I almost fell. My flashlight swayed, its light cutting through distorted shadows underground. I forced myself to focus. I gripped the driver's side door handle. Cold. Locked. I tried every door. Locked. Every single one. The smell grew stronger. Dampness. Decay. Something wrong. That's when I heard a muffled sound coming from inside the car. It wasn't an engine. It wasn't the wind. It was breathing. Slow. Heavy. Damp. Like someone trying to draw air through a waterlogged lung. I dropped the crowbar. I ran to the elevator. I pressed the button hard. The doors took forever to close. Before they climbed all the way up, I looked back one last time. The handprints on the glass had increased. Now they covered the entire window. I didn't sleep. When my shift ended at 6 a.m., I left the building without looking back. I drove home with my hands gripping the steering wheel, trembling. I arrived at my apartment, locked the door, closed the curtains, and sat on the sofa. I stood there, motionless, until the sun had fully risen. I thought about calling in sick to work, saying I wasn't coming back, but I needed the money. And more than that, a part of me needed to understand. The following night, I returned. I arrived at 10:45 p.m. The guard post was cold, the lights flickering as usual. I turned on the monitors. Everything normal. I did the first round at 11 p.m., but this time I changed my route. I went straight up to the 12th floor. I avoided the basement. I avoided the 3rd. I avoided the 7th. If I hadn't gone to him, maybe he wouldn't have shown up. I finished my patrol. I went back. Nothing. Not a single car. I breathed a sigh of relief. But at 1 a.m., the lights on the guardhouse flickered. All at once. They passed out for 3 seconds. They came back on. I looked at the monitors. The screen in the basement was showing static. Then it went back to normal. And there he was, the gray sedan, parking space B12. My stomach churned. No, I hadn't gone there. How could he? I picked up the radio, but stopped before pressing the button. Why bother? They're not going to see anything anyway. I stared at the screen. The car was there, motionless, silent. But something was different. The headlights were on. Low, weak, as if the battery were almost dying. I swallowed hard. I'm not going down. I'm not. But then, on the screen, the headlights flashed. Once, 2, 3 times, as if it were calling me. I stood up from the chair. My breathing was rapid. I felt angry. Angry at being afraid. Angry at not understanding. I grabbed the flashlight, the radio, and went downstairs. When the elevator doors opened in the basement, the silence was absolute. The car's headlights were off now. Everything was dark, except for the faint fluorescent lights on the ceiling. I walked to the car, slowly. Each step echoed. The windows were still fogged up. The handprints were still there, but now there was something more. Words, writing on the fogged glass. From the inside. Shaky, slurred, almost illegible handwriting. Help, my blood ran cold. I walked around the car, on the rear window, another word, taken, and on the windshield. Bigger, desperate, get out of here. My breath caught in my throat. The words were fresh. Steam still clung to the letters. That's when I heard the sound. Beats, coming from the trunk. Thump, thump, thump. Rhythmic, insistent, desperate. I stepped back. I bumped into the concrete pillar behind me. The flashlight fell from my hand and rolled across the ground. The beats intensified, louder, faster. Thump, thump, thump. And then, it stopped. Silence. I was frozen. Cold sweat trickled down my face. I couldn't move. Slowly, very slowly, the driver's side window began to clear, as if an invisible hand were reaching through the fog, making space. And then I saw a silhouette sitting in the driver's seat. Property, facing forward. I couldn't see the face, just the dark outline of a head, shoulders, arms hanging loosely at the sides of the body. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it was going to explode. The silhouette began to turn its head, slowly, in my direction. I didn't expect to see his face. Run. I ran faster than I'd run in years. I climbed the stairs. I didn't trust the elevator. I climbed 12 floors without stopping. I reached the guard booth, locked the door, and turned off the lights. I stayed there, trembling, until dawn. I resigned the following morning. I called the building manager and told him it was a family emergency. He didn't question it. He said he would send my final payment by bank transfer. I thought it would be the end, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. The words on the glass, the knocks on the trunk, the silhouette turning its head, taken. What if there really was someone there? What if I had abandoned someone? 3 days later, I returned to the building. During the day, not as an employee, as a visitor, I went into the administration area. A bored, middle-aged woman was working behind the counter. "Can I help you?" "Yes, I worked here as a night watchman. I wanted to know about the building's history. Has there ever been an accident?" "Has anyone gone missing?" She frowned. Why the question? Curiosity. She sighed and typed something on the old computer. There was a case. It was about 8 years ago. A man disappeared. He worked on the 5th floor, insurance company. He left work one night and was never seen again. My stomach tightened. Did they find the body? No. He simply vanished. His car was found in the basement, locked. Keys in the ignition. But he never showed up. What kind of car? She looked at the screen. Sedan. Cinza. A Malibu 2005. I felt the air escaping from my lungs. Is the car still here? She looked at me strangely. No. It was towed away years ago. Why? I didn't answer. I left without looking back. But I needed to be sure. I needed to see it with my own eyes. I came back one last time. At night. Not as an employee. I entered through the side entrance, which never locked properly. I went down to the basement. Empty. No cars. No gray sedans. Just rows of empty parking spaces. Cold concrete. Dim lights buzzing. I took a deep breath. Maybe it was all over. Maybe I had finally... I saw something. In parking space B12, a stain on the floor. I approached. I knelt down. It was oil. Old oil. But it formed a specific pattern. The exact shape of a parked car. And in the middle of the stain, scratched into the concrete with something sharp, was a word. Skirt. I jumped up quickly. My heart was racing. That's when I felt it. The air grew colder, heavy. The smell of mold and decay filled my lungs. And behind me, I heard the sound of an engine starting. Slow, muffled, distant, but getting closer. I'll come. The hallway was empty, but in the end, where the light barely reached, I saw 2 headlights. Low, weak, blinking, looking at me. I ran. I didn't look back. I went upstairs, went through the side door, ran down the street to my car. I got in, locked the doors, started the engine and sped off. In the rearview mirror, for a second, I saw it. A gray sedan, standing at the exit of the basement. Property, watching me walk away. It's been 3 weeks. I moved. I changed cities. I got a new job. Daytime. In a place full of people. But there are nights when I wake up sweating, with my heart pounding. And when I look out the window of my new apartment, sometimes I see it, a gray sedan, parked on the street, engine off, fogged windows, waiting. I know I'll have to go back there someday, because whatever was in that car, I don't think it was asking for help. He was warning me, and now, I think he followed me. Something happened to me, and to this day I can't understand it. I work as a night watchman at a corporate parking garage in Denver and Colorado. 6 underground floors, 340 parking spaces, 0 traffic after 11 p.m. It's the kind of job nobody wants. 10-hour shifts, total solitude, the biting winter cold seeping in through the access ramps. But for me, it was perfect. After the divorce, I couldn't stand being in the empty apartment anymore. The silence there suffocated me in a different way. So when I saw the opening for the night shift, I accepted without thinking twice. I thought it would be easy, safe, predictable. My job is simple. Stay in the control booth on basement level 2, monitor 12 security cameras, check the motion sensors every hour, and ensure that no one enters or leaves without authorization. The entire building closes at 10. After that, it's just me, the hum of the fluorescent lights, and the occasional echo of a pipe crackling with the changing temperature. The first few weeks were exactly what I expected. Nothing happened. I watched videos on my phone, ate cold sandwiches, drank reheated coffee. The motion sensors stayed quiet all night, except when a rat passed near the emergency exits. The system was sensitive, but reliable. Any movement triggered an alert on the monitor, showed the exact location, and the cameras recorded everything. Until one night, around 3 in the morning, one of the sensors went off. Basement level 4, corridor B, west section. I looked at the monitor. The camera showed the empty hallway, concrete pillars, yellow lines on the floor, 2 lights flickering faintly on the ceiling. No cars, no people, no visible movement. I noted in the report, false alarm, 0308, basement 4B. I went back to scrolling through my phone's feed, but something kept bothering me. It wasn't the alarm itself. Those systems fail all the time. It was the time, 3:08 in the morning. Exactly. 2 days later, it happened again. Same sensor, same corridor, same time, 3:08. I checked the camera. Nothing, absolutely nothing moving. I started paying attention. The following night, I adjusted the monitor to focus on that hallway before 3 o'clock. I stared intently at the screen, waiting. 3:07. 3:08. The sensor went off. And in the camera, empty. Just cold concrete and shadows. But this time, I felt something different. A strange pressure in my chest, as if the air inside the cabin had become heavier. I stood up, placed my hand on the metal door of the control room, and took a deep breath. It's just a faulty sensor," I said aloud. My voice echoed back to me, and for some reason, that didn't reassure me. The following week, I started writing everything down. Each time the sensor triggered, I recorded the date, the exact time, the duration of the alert, and the camera conditions. I wanted to prove to myself that it was random, that there was no pattern, that I was creating connections where none existed, but the numbers didn't lie. Always 3:08 a.m. Always corridor B of basement level 4. Always with nothing visible on the cameras. I even considered the possibility of a technical problem, a faulty sensor, exposed wiring, moisture on the circuit boards. I emailed the supervisor requesting maintenance. He replied 3 days later saying he would evaluate it. Translation, nothing would be done. So I continued. Every night, at 3 in the morning, I would stop what I was doing and keep an eye on the monitor. It didn't matter if I was eating, in the bathroom, or trying not to doze off. I would interrupt everything and wait. and the sensor would go off. Always. I started to feel something different when this happened. It wasn't just the electronic beep in the system. It was a physical sensation. As if the room temperature suddenly dropped a couple of degrees. As if the air became dense, heavy, difficult to breathe deeply. One night, I was staring directly at the screen when it happened. The alarm went off. The hallway was completely empty. But I swore that I saw something move at the edge of the painting. Just a shadow, a quick blur. I rewound the recording, frame by frame. Nothing. I tried again, slower. I adjusted the brightness and contrast. Nothing. It's all in your head, I whispered to myself. But my voice came out shaky. I started avoiding looking at the clock around 3 o'clock, as if ignoring the time would prevent it from happening. Childish, I know, but fear isn't rational, and I was starting to feel afraid. On the 12th consecutive night of activations, I made a decision. I was going to go down there. I couldn't just keep looking at the monitor anymore. I needed to see it with my own eyes, touch the walls, feel the air, confirm that nothing was wrong. So, at 2:50 in the morning, I grabbed the flashlight, the portable radio, and the master keys. I left the cabin door ajar, part of me didn't want to be locked down there, and started to descend. The elevator was out of service during the night shift, so I used the emergency stairs. Each step echoed. The sound rose and fell through the concrete floors as if someone else were walking on another level. I would stop. The echo would stop. It continued. Or the echo continued. Basement 2, basement 3, basement 4. I pushed open the fire door and entered corridor B. The cold hit me immediately. It wasn't the normal winter chill. It was something damp, penetrating, that felt like it went straight to the bone. The smell of old concrete and motor oil hung in the air. The fluorescent lights hummed softly, some flickering at irregular intervals. The supporting pillars cast long, distorted shadows on the floor. I looked at the clock on my cell phone, then 04. I walked slowly to the spot where the sensor was installed, a gray box on the ceiling with a flashing red LED. Everything seemed normal, empty, silent. So, at exactly 3:08, I heard it, a gentle click. The sensor had been triggered, but I was standing still, completely motionless, and there was no one else there. He had. My heart raced. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe. I just stood there, frozen in the middle of the hallway, trying to understand what had happened. The sensor had been triggered. I was motionless. There was no one around. I looked around slowly. The shadows between the pillars seemed darker now, more solid, as if they were watching back. It might have been me, I whispered to myself. The sensor detected my movement from before, but I knew it didn't make sense. These sensors have a delay of seconds, not minutes, and I was already stopped when it activated. I raised the flashlight and aimed it at the end of the corridor. The beam of light cut through the darkness, illuminating the yellow lines on the floor, the pillars, the access ramp to basement level 5. Nothing, not even dust moving in the air. I took a deep breath, and the air came out in vapor. My breath was visible, underground level 4. In June, in Denver. This isn't right, I said, and my voice echoed back to me, distorted, as if it had returned from a much deeper place than it should have. That's when I felt it. A presence. I can't explain it any better than that. I didn't see anything. I didn't hear footsteps. But I knew, the same way you know when someone is staring at you from behind, that I wasn't alone. My instinct screamed, "Get out of here." I took a step back, then another. I slowly turned my body toward the fire door. And then it happened. Another sensor went off. Not in front of me, behind me. I turned quickly, the flashlight trembling in my hand. The hallway remained empty, but the red LED on another sensor 5 meters back, was lit. My blood ran cold. I started walking faster, almost running, and the sensors started to go off, one by one, in my direction, not in front of me, not beside me, behind me. It was as if something was following me, tracking me. With each step I took, a new sensor lit up behind me, in the exact sequence, as if marking the trajectory of something invisible. Click, click, click. The sound of the sensors activating in cascade echoed down the hallway like a countdown. I ran. I didn't think. I just ran. The flashlight swayed in my hand, the beam of light bouncing uncontrollably off the walls. My footsteps pounded against the concrete like drums. I reached the fire door, pushed it open forcefully, and climbed onto the stairs. I looked back one last time. The hallway was completely silent. All sensors are off, as if nothing had happened. I stumbled up the stairs, gripping the cold handrail, breathing in short, desperate gasps. Basement 3. Basement 2. My chest ached. My vision blurred. I just wanted to get to the cabin, lock the door, convince myself I'd imagined it all. I reached the corridor on basement level 2, ran to the control room, and pushed open the door, and I froze. No monitor. On the monitoring screen, a red light was flashing. Alert. Presence detected. Location. Control room. Basement level 2. My room. I was looking at the screen, registering my own presence, but the system was marking to attendance. The number in the corner of the screen glowed red. I will turn slowly. The room was empty. The concrete walls. The table with the monitors. The chair where I spent 10 hours a night. Empty. But the system persisted. 2 presences. I closed the door slowly, locking the handle with trembling hands. I sat in the chair. I looked at the monitor again. The number was still there. And this time, I noticed something I hadn't noticed before. The sensor that triggered was not the one at the entrance. It's what's behind my chair. I couldn't move. My body was glued to the chair, my eyes fixed on the monitor. The number was still there. 2 presences. One was me, the other. I didn't turn my head. I didn't look back, because something inside me, a primal, animal part, knew that if I turned around, I would see something my brain wasn't ready to process. The room was completely silent, not even the hum of the lamps, not even the distant hum of the ventilation system. Nothing. As if the sound had been sucked from the air. My breath came out in shivers. Cold sweat trickled down the back of my neck. I could feel it, to really feel. Something behind me. It wasn't heat. It wasn't movement. It was weight. Presence. A density in the air that shouldn't exist. I forced my eyes to move. I looked away from the monitor and fixed my gaze on the polished metal surface of the table. A faint, distorted reflection. And there, behind my chair, something dark. It had no defined shape. It had no face. But it was there. Still, motionless, as if it were watching me. My stomach churned. Don't turn, don't turn, don't turn. I gripped the arms of the chair so tightly my fingers ached. I tried to breathe slowly, to count to 10, to convince myself it was a hallucination, exhaustion, paranoia, but the system wasn't hallucinating. Suddenly, the number changed. And I knew. It had come out of the room. I didn't hear footsteps. I didn't hear the door open, but the sensor behind me went out. The air pressure disappeared. The temperature returned to normal. I took a deep breath, a hoarse, desperate sound, and finally turned my head. The room was empty, completely empty. I stood up, my legs trembling, leaned on the table, and looked through the small reinforced glass window in the door. The hallway outside was shrouded in twilight. The dim lights flickered, and I swore I'd seen something moving in the corner of my eye, something gliding along the wall, something that didn't walk. It floated. I locked the door again, Twice. I checked the lock. I pushed the table against the door. It wasn't protocol, but I didn't care about protocol anymore. I sat on the floor, my back to the wall, staring intently at the door. The clock showed 3:34 in the morning. There were still more than 5 hours left until the shift ended. I picked up my cell phone and thought about calling someone, the police, and what would I say? There's a ghost in the parking lot. They'd laugh at me, or worse, they'd think I was having a breakdown. I called the supervisor. Voicemail. I sent a message. No response. I stayed there, sitting on the cold floor, trembling. And that's when I realized I had run inside from the room. Not outside the building, not on the street, not for security. I had run inside, as if that room were a refuge. But if that thing could get in there, then there was no refuge at all. I looked at the monitor again. All the cameras showed empty hallways, empty parking spaces, empty staircases. But I knew they weren't. Something was down there, waiting. And for the first time, a question occurred to me that made me tremble more than any sensor going off. Could it be that it's always been here? Or did I wake him up? I should have resigned that very night. I should have waited for my shift to end, gone up to the street, and never come back. But I didn't do that. Do you know why? Because I needed the job. It sounds stupid, right? It sounds cowardly. But the truth is that simple. I had bills to pay, rent overdue, child support, debts that don't just disappear because you saw something you can't explain. So I came back. The following night, I entered the building with cold, sweaty palms. I went down to the booth. I sat in the chair. I turned on the monitors, and I waited. 2:50 a.m. passed, 3 a.m., 3:05 a.m. My heart was beating so hard, I could hear my pulse in my ears. 3:08, the sensor went off. Basement level 4, corridor B. I looked at the monitor, nothing visible. I took a deep breath. I wrote it down in the report. I tried to act as if it were normal, but I knew it was there. In the following nights, I started testing limits. I know, it sounds crazy, but I needed to understand. I needed to know if what happened had been real, or if I was losing my mind. So I made small changes. One night, I left the cabin door unlocked. The other night, I turned off some monitors. Once, I even went down to basement level 3, not 4, never again, 4, just to see if the sensors would react. And they reacted. Not in the same way, not with the same intensity, but I felt it. I always felt it, that presence. It was as if something had become aware of me, as if I had entered something's territory. And now it knew I existed. One night I dozed off by accident. It wasn't on purpose. I simply couldn't take it anymore. I closed my eyes for a few seconds and I woke up at 3:08 in the morning. Exactly. Not 3:07, not 3:09, 3:08. And the room was freezing. My breath came out in thick vapor. The lights flickered faintly. And on the monitor, all the sensors in basement level 4 were triggered, all at the same time. It was as if something had filled the entire hallway. I was paralyzed. I couldn't take my eyes off the screen. And then, one by one, the sensors began to shut down. From the bottom up. Basement level 4, basement level 3, basement level 2. Going up, heading towards my classroom, I jumped up, locking the door with trembling hands. I pressed my ear against the cold wood and tried to listen for anything outside. Silence, but the sensors in the hallway where I was lit up. One, then another one, then another one, stopping right in front of my door. I held my breath. 5 seconds, 10, 20. The sensor went out, and he never fired again that night. Since then, I've learned a few things. I don't go down to basement level 4. Never, not even if they pay me double. I don't turn my back to the door after 3 in the morning. And every night, at 3:08, I look at the monitor and wait. Sometimes nothing happens. Other times, the sensor triggers, and I know that it's there, observing, waiting. I don't know what. I still work here. I still do my shift. I still write up reports as if everything were normal. But every night, when I lock the cabin door and sit in this chair, I feel it. That weight in the air, that cold that shouldn't exist. And the certainty that, no matter how many cameras I have, no matter how many lights I turn on, there's something down here with me. And he knows who I am. Something happened to me. And to this day, I can't understand it. I've worked as a night parking attendant for 6 years. 6 years doing the same thing every night in the basement of a corporate building in Detroit that was vacated 3 years ago. The security company keeps the place running. I don't really know why. Maybe legal issues. Maybe nobody cares enough to shut it down for good. My shift starts at 10 p.m. and ends at 6 a.m. 8 hours alone, 3 floors below street level, surrounded by concrete, broken cameras, and the constant hum of fluorescent lights. Most of them don't even work properly anymore. They flicker. They always flicker. I used to hate silence. Now I don't even notice it anymore. That night, November 14th, everything seemed normal. I arrived on time, switched shifts with Dennis, who barely glanced at me before rushing off as he always does. I grabbed my reheated coffee, sat in the dusty glass booth, and turned on the monitors. 3 screens displaying blind spots in a dead space. No cars entered, no cars left. This was common. Sometimes I would go the whole night without seeing anyone. But around 3:40 in the morning, I got up to do the rounds. It's protocol. Walk through the 3 levels, check if everything is locked, if no homeless people have entered, if there are no new leaks, things like that. I saw it on the second basement level. A car, alone, parked in space B17, near the back wall, where the lighting is even worse. A dark sedan, a Honda Accord, I think, covered in a thin layer of dust. I stopped. That didn't make sense. I had made my rounds at 11 p.m. There was nothing there, and no one had entered after that. I would have seen it on the monitors, or at least heard the automatic gate going up. I approached slowly. My footsteps echoed too loudly on the empty concrete. The car was cold, completely cold, as if it had been there for hours, days, maybe. I grabbed my flashlight and shone it through the windows. Empty back seat, clean front seat. Nothing unusual. No stickers on the window. No visible ticket on the dashboard. Then I saw something hanging from the rearview mirror. A badge. Small, rectangular, swaying slightly, but there was no wind underneath. I went back to the cabin. My heart was racing, but I didn't know why. It was just a car, just a forgotten car. I accessed the system. I typed in the license plate. The screen loaded, and what appeared made my stomach churn. Entry recorded, March 19th, 2019. 5 years ago. I stared at the screen for too long. March 19th, 2019. That wasn't possible. Not the way the system worked. After 24 hours without payment, the vehicle was marked as abandoned. After 72 hours, it was towed. It was automatic, rigid protocol. I myself had already triggered this procedure dozens of times. So how on earth was a car there, registered for 5 years, without having been removed? I ran back to the second basement level. This time, I didn't walk slowly. My steps pounded against the concrete, echoing between the supporting columns. The air was colder than before. Or perhaps that was just my imagination. I stopped in front of the Honda. The dust on the convertible top was real, thick, the kind that accumulates over time. I ran my finger across it and left a clean mark. My stomach clenched. I shone the flashlight inside again. This time, I paid closer attention. In the cup holder, a coin, a half-empty plastic water bottle, the liquid already cloudy. On the dashboard, above the radio, there was a yellowed post-it note with something handwritten on it, but illegible from the outside. And that badge on the rearview mirror. He kept swaying, slightly, as if someone had just touched him. I tried the door. Locked. All locked. I went back to the booth once more. My fingers trembled as I searched through the old system files. There had to be an explanation. A typo. A database glitch. I searched for the month of March 2019, and I found it. A single entry at 2:37 p.m., matching license plate. But there was no exit, and even more disturbing, there was no exit, none abandonment notice, no towing order, nothing. As if the system had simply forgotten about the car. Or worse, it's as if someone had deliberately erased everything except the initial record. I dug deeper. I tried to access the employee logs from that time. Who was on duty that night? Who was supposed to be doing the rounds? The screen loaded, and my blood ran cold. Night shift operator, Rodrigo Mendez, my name. But I wasn't working here in 2019. I was hired in 2020, October 2020. I clearly remembered the interview, Dennis training me. The first few weeks trying to memorize the access codes. I was here in 2019. The cold of the parking lot felt like it had seeped inside me. I felt my breathing become heavy, irregular. That's when I heard it, a sound, coming from the second basement level. Bang, like a car door closing. I jumped up from the chair so fast it spun and hit the wall behind me. I grabbed the flashlight. My mouth was dry. I went down the stairs. Each of my steps echoed twice, as if someone were coming down with me. I arrived at the second basement level. The Honda was still there. But now the interior light was on. The car's interior light shone dimly and yellowish, as if the battery was almost dead. I stood about 3 meters away, holding the flashlight so tightly that my hand hurt. Nobody had opened that car. I would have heard. I would have seen. But the light was on. I took a deep breath. Once. Twice. I tried to think rationally. Short circuit. Faulty presence sensor. Some electrical fault after years of being idle. I didn't believe any of those explanations. Still, I approached. The flashlight beam flickered as I shone it through the driver's side window. Inside, everything seemed unchanged. The post-it note was still on the dashboard. The water bottle was still in the cup holder. But the badge on the rearview mirror, it had stopped rocking. He was facing me. I tried the door again, still locked. I looked around. The parking lot was absolutely silent now. Not even the hum of the lights, not even a dripping tap. Nothing. Only my breath. And then I remembered. I had the master key. All operators have one. For emergencies. For abandonment situations. I ran back to the cabin, grabbed the bunch of keys, and went back downstairs, faster this time, as if something might disappear if I took too long. When I returned, the interior light was still on. I inserted the key into the driver's side door. My hand was shaking so much that I missed twice before I managed to turn it. Click. The lock was released. I opened the door slowly. The smell hit me immediately. It wasn't rot. It wasn't mold. It was something old, like paper stored in closed drawers for decades, like clothes forgotten in a basement. I entered carefully, illuminating every corner. The post-it note simply said, "I'll be right back." The handwriting was hurried and slanted. I grabbed the badge from the rearview mirror. It was old, matte plastic, with the logo of the security company that managed the parking lot. The same logo that was on my own ID badge. I turned him around to see the photo, and my heart stopped. The name printed below the photo, Rodrigo Mendez. The photo was of a man in his 30s, short hair, unshaven, deep dark circles under his eyes. It was my face, but it wasn't me. His eyes were empty, deep set, as if whoever that man was hadn't slept in weeks. His hair was different, longer at the sides, and there was something in his gaze, something lifeless, like someone who had already given up. I dropped my badge on the bench. My breath was short and rapid. I needed to get out of there. I needed air. But first, I saw the trunk was slightly open. I hadn't noticed before. Maybe it wasn't like this before. Maybe. I got out of the car, walked around to the back, and opened it completely. Inside there was only a cardboard box, small, sealed with old, yellowed tape. My name was written on the lid, using the same handwriting as a post-it note. I picked up the box. It was light, almost empty. I tore the tape. Shelter. Inside there were 3 things. A faded Polaroid photo. It showed the parking lot, the same place where I was now. But in the corner of the blurred image, there was a silhouette. Someone with their back turned, looking at the camera over their shoulder. A parking ticket. Date, March 19th, 2019. Entry time, 2:37 p.m. And a key, small, golden, with a number engraved on it, 304. I recognized the shape immediately. It was the key to a locker. One of the lockers in basement 3, a place I had never been before. I stood there, holding that key, trying to understand. Basement level 3 was restricted. I knew it existed. I'd seen the sign on the stairwell leading up there, marked with yellow barrier tape and a faded warning. No access, maintenance. But in 6 years, I never thought about going down. Never who to descend. I put the key in my pocket, placed the photo and ticket back in the box, and closed the trunk. The car's interior light was still on. I left it like that. I couldn't touch that car anymore. I returned to the cabin trembling. Not from the cold, from something worse. I sat in the chair, turned on the portable heater I kept under the table, and tried to calm down. I needed to think. I needed a logical explanation. Someone was playing a prank on me. It had to be Dennis, maybe. Or some other operator from the afternoon shift. A nasty joke. But that badge. I accessed my own employee file in the system. Hiring date, October 12th, 2020. Everything is correct. My information. My photo. The same one that was on my current ID badge. But then, why did the system show my name in 2019? I tried to access the personnel records for that year. Old files. The screen loaded slowly, and something was wrong. There was a gap. Between January 2019 and December 2020, the records were incomplete. Pages were missing. Names were cut off, as if someone had deliberately deleted information. But some fragments remained. And in one of them, I found my name again. Rodrigo Mendez, night shift operator. Hired, 03/01/2019, impossible. I wasn't living in Detroit in 2019. I was in Ohio. I worked in a warehouse. I remember my boss. I remember the tiny apartment I shared with my cousin. I remember. I tried to force my memory. What did I do in March 2019? Nothing came. Push harder. Where was I that month? Silence in my head. My divorce was in 2018. I remember it. Clearly. The fights, the paperwork, the move to Ohio. But then what? After, there was a fog, a hole, as if someone had erased pieces of my life. I tried to remember how I got this job in Detroit, who recommended me, how I found out about the opening. Nothing. All I remembered was being here. Suddenly, as if I'd always been here. My breathing became irregular again. I leaned my head against the cold wall behind me and closed my eyes. That's when I heard steps, slow, rhythmic, echoing on the stairs, coming from below. From basement level 3, I opened my eyes. I grabbed the flashlight. My whole body was tense. The footsteps continued, closer and closer, climbing, one step at a time. Goal, goal, goal. They stopped on the second basement level. Where was Honda? I held my breath. I looked at the monitors. The cameras on the second basement level were working, at least the two that were still functional. The screen showed the empty hallway. The columns, the Honda with its interior lights still on, nobody. But the footsteps had been real. I had heard them. Then, on the screen, I saw something. The driver's side door of the Honda opened, alone, slowly, and someone left. A silhouette, dark, blurred in the grainy camera image, turned with its back to me. She stood beside the car for a few seconds. Then he turned his head. He looked directly at the camera, for me, and he started walking towards the cabin, in my direction. I locked the cabin door. My hands were shaking so much that the key almost fell out. I locked it twice, 3 times. I pulled to make sure. I looked at the monitors. The silhouette was no longer on the screen. He disappeared between one camera and another, but I knew she was coming. I could feel it. The air grew heavier, colder, as if something were sucking the heat from the environment. I grabbed my cell phone. No signal. There was never any signal down there, but I still tried dialing 911. Nothing. I tried calling Dennis. The call dropped before it was completed. I looked at the fogged glass door of the cabin. On the other side, the corridor leading to the stairs was plunged in twilight. Only 2 fluorescent lights were working, flickering at irregular intervals. And then I heard it. Tock, tock, tock. Footsteps. In the hallway, coming toward me. Slow, deliberate. I stopped breathing. The footsteps stopped right in front of the door. Nothing happened for several long seconds. Then, a hand banged on the glass. Tock, tock, tock. 3 knocks. Calm. My entire body was frozen. Then, a voice, muffled, hoarse, as if it came from very far away. Rodrigo. My name. You should have left. It wasn't a threat. It was a warning. A lament. But you never will. The hand struck again, harder this time. Because you're already here. And then I understood. The key is in my pocket. The key to locker 304. I needed to get off the bus. I don't know how I knew, but I knew. I exited through the back door of the cabin, the one that led to the opposite corridor, and ran. I passed the first basement level. I went down to the second. I didn't look at the Honda. I didn't look back. I reached the staircase that led to the third basement level. The electrical tape was torn. Recently. I went downstairs. The staircase was narrow. The walls sweated with dampness. The air smelled of rust and old concrete. I came to a metal door. It was unlocked. I pushed. The locker rooms were empty. Rows of rusty lockers, rotting wooden benches, dead lights. I used the flashlight to find the number 304. It was at the back, the last locker in the last row. I inserted the key. I turned it. Shelter. Inside was a uniform, just like the one I used to wear. But old. Faded. With a dark stain on the chest. It looked like dried blood. And there was a name tag hanging there. I picked it up with trembling hands. My name, my photo. But the issue date. 03/01/2019. Underneath the uniform, a diary. I opened it to the last pages. The notes were mine. My handwriting. But I didn't remember writing that. March 17th. I heard something in basement 3, again. March 18th. I can't get out. The doors are locked. But the system shows they're open. March 19th. I saw him. I saw myself. He's trying to replace me. And the last entry. I don't know how much time passes down here. I don't know if I'm still alive. But if you're reading this, I'm sorry. You're next. I closed my schedule. My legs gave out. I sat down on the rotten bench. Everything made sense now. I wasn't hired in 2020. I never left here in 2019. That car, that ticket, that badge, it was mine. I entered that parking lot 5 years ago. and I never left. I looked at the clock on the locker room wall. It was stopped at 3:47 a.m. I picked up my cell phone. The screen showed 03:47. Always 03:47. Always the same time, same shift, the same night. Going back up the stairs, I heard the automatic gate open. A car is driving in. On the monitor in the cabin, I saw a dark sedan park in space, B-17. A man came out, operator's uniform, badge on his chest. He looked around. Confused, disoriented. How I should have looked at it 5 years ago. I sat down in the chair. I grabbed my reheated coffee. I turned on the monitors, and I waited, because that's what I do. Every night. Forever. If you work the night shift, tell me where. And if you've ever been through something similar, you already know what to do.